By midnight, Brenda Rossi would be on a plane to Buenos Aires. Her credit cards canceled. Her marriage over. Her life as she knew it erased. But at 4:47 p.m., she had no idea what was coming. She was too busy hurting a child. "Please, Mommy. I'm sorry." 7-year-old Eva knelt on the kitchen floor, tears streaming down her face. Above her stood the woman who was supposed to protect her. And behind them both, heavy footsteps echoed down the hallway. Slow, deliberate, measured. The kind of footsteps that make grown men reach for their weapons. Maxwell Rossi was home. And then, the front door clicked open. Everything changed in that instant. The air itself seemed to freeze. Even Brenda stopped mid-breath, her hand still raised, her face draining of color. Maxwell Rossi had come home early. What happens when a mafia boss discovers the one person he loves has been living in terror? We would like to beg a favor. We have been dropping powerful videos daily, and we want you to help us grow by subscribing to our channel. Thank you for helping us grow. Let us know where you are watching from. Drop your location below, because this story is about to get darker than you can imagine. Maxwell appeared in the doorway like a storm cloud rolling in, silent, dark, and inevitable. His tailored black suit was immaculate, not a thread out of place. His salt and pepper hair was slicked back, revealing a face carved from granite and sharpened by decades of violence. But it was his eyes that told the real story. Cold, calculating, missing nothing. Those eyes swept the scene in less than 3 seconds. Eva on the floor, red-faced, trembling, bruised. Brenda standing over her, guilty expression quickly masked by a practiced smile. The stuffed rabbit dangling from Brenda's hand like a noose. "Maxwell, darling," Brenda said, her voice suddenly honey-sweet. "You're home early. I was just disciplining Eva. She's been acting out again. You know how children can be." Maxwell said nothing. He didn't move. He just stood there, his presence filling the room like smoke. His gaze dropped to Eva. The little girl stared back at him with wide, terrified eyes. But not because she feared what he might do to Brenda. No. She was terrified he wouldn't believe her. That he would choose Brenda over her. Again. It was a fear that cut deeper than any blade Maxwell had ever wielded. For a moment, just a heartbeat, Maxwell saw something else. A memory. A different little girl, years ago, cowering in the ruins of a burning building. Her parents were dead, casualties of a turf war Maxwell himself had orchestrated. He'd found her there, covered in ash and blood, clutching a stuffed rabbit for dear life. He'd taken her in. Not out of obligation. Not out of guilt. But because when he looked into her eyes that day, he saw something he hadn't seen in years. Innocence. And he'd sworn to protect it. "Eva," Maxwell said quietly, his voice like gravel underfoot. "Go to your room." The little girl hesitated. Her eyes filled with fresh tears. She thought he was dismissing her, sending her away, choosing Brenda. "Please, Daddy," she whispered, her voice breaking. Maxwell crouched down slowly, lowering himself to her level. His knees cracked, a reminder that he wasn't as young as he used to be. But when he spoke, his voice softened in a way it never did for anyone else on earth. "Sweetheart," he said gently, "I need you to go upstairs and lock your door. I'm going to have a conversation with Mommy. Can you do that for me?" Eva nodded, clutching her rabbit to her chest. She bolted past Brenda, her small feet slapping against the marble as she disappeared up the grand staircase. The moment her bedroom door clicked shut upstairs, the temperature in the kitchen dropped 20 degrees. Maxwell stood slowly. His full height, 6'3" of controlled rage. He locked eyes with Brenda. Start talking. You think you know what happens next. But trust me, Maxwell Rossi doesn't do what you expect. Brenda laughed. It was a nervous, high-pitched sound that echoed too loud in the silent kitchen. Maxwell, honestly, she's being dramatic. You know how children are. They exaggerate everything. I barely touched her. How long? The question was so quiet, so cold, that Brenda actually took a step backward. Her designer heels clicked against the marble. How long? Maxwell repeated, his voice dropping even lower. Have you been hurting my daughter? Your daughter. And there it was. The mask slipped. Bitterness bled through Brenda's carefully constructed facade like poison through silk. Maxwell, she's not even yours, Brenda spat. She's some orphan you dragged home because you felt guilty about her parents. She doesn't belong in this family. She doesn't belong in this house. And she certainly doesn't deserve to call you Dad. The room went silent. Maxwell didn't shout. He didn't raise his hand. He didn't even blink. He simply pulled out his phone and dialed a number. 1 ring. 2. Marco, Maxwell said calmly, his eyes never leaving Brenda's face. Bring the boys to the house. Now. Brenda's face went from pale to ash-white. Her hands started shaking. Maxwell, wait. Did you think I wouldn't find out? His voice was quieter now. More dangerous. The kind of quiet that precedes executions. Did you think I wouldn't notice the bruises on her arms? The way she flinches when you walk into a room? The fact that my 7-year-old daughter is terrified to eat dinner at her own table. Brenda's mouth opened, but no words came out. Maxwell took a step forward. Then another. Slow. Measured. Each step deliberate as a death sentence. You starved her, he said, his voice like a blade sliding from its sheath. You locked her in the basement. You told her she killed her real parents. You destroyed her toys one by one, made her watch while you threw them in the fireplace. You made her believe she was worthless, unwanted, a burden. Each word landed like a fist. Brenda stumbled backward until her spine hit the kitchen counter. I was trying to make her tougher. She needs discipline, Maxwell. She needs to understand. What she needs, Maxwell interrupted, his voice rising for the first time, is a mother who doesn't torture her for sport. Brenda's eyes widened. Torture? Maxwell, don't be ridiculous. You burned her hand on the stove. Silence. 3 weeks ago. I saw the bandage. You told me she touched the burner by accident. But she didn't, did she? Brenda's face crumpled. She was lying about doing her homework. She's 7 years old. She needs to learn. She's 7 years old. The shout echoed through the mansion like a gunshot. Even Brenda, who'd seen Maxwell angry before, had never heard him yell like that. Not with that kind of raw, unfiltered fury. And then, just as quickly, the rage vanished. Maxwell went cold again. Calm. Controlled. And somehow, that was infinitely worse. And the worst part, Maxwell said softly, almost conversationally, is that you didn't do this out of some twisted sense of discipline. You did it because you were jealous. Jealous of a child. Brenda's eyes filled with tears. She took you away from me. Ever since you brought her home, you stopped looking at me the way you used to. You stopped caring. I stopped caring, Maxwell said quietly, the moment you laid a hand on my daughter. What do you do when the person you married becomes the monster you hunt? Keep watching. Because Maxwell Rossi is about to cross a line even his enemies fear. The sound of cars pulling up outside broke the tension. Doors slammed. Heavy footsteps approached the front entrance. Brenda's breathing quickened. Maxwell, please. Let's talk about this. We can work this out. I'll apologize to her. I'll do better. I promise. Your promises, Maxwell said, are worth less than nothing. The front door opened. Marco stepped inside first, 6'5", barrel-chested, with a scar running from his temple to his jaw. Behind him came 3 other men, all dressed in dark suits, all wearing the same expression of grim readiness. Marco took one look at the scene and understood immediately. His eyes flicked from Brenda to Maxwell, then back again. "Boss," Marco said quietly. "Mrs. Rossi," Maxwell said, his voice formal now detached, "is leaving us tonight. Permanently." Brenda's knees buckled. She grabbed the counter to keep from falling. "Maxwell, no. Please. I'm your wife. We've been together for 5 years." "You were my wife," Maxwell corrected. "As of this moment, you're nothing. You can't do this. I can do whatever I want." The cold certainty in his voice was absolute. Final. The voice of a man who'd ordered hundreds of deaths and lost exactly 0 seconds of sleep over it. Brenda's tears were flowing freely now, mascara running down her cheeks in black rivers. "What about our life together? What about everything we built?" "Everything we built," Maxwell said, "was a lie. I just didn't see it until tonight." He turned to Marco. "She has 10 minutes to pack 1 suitcase. Give her 50,000 in cash. Drive her to the airport. Put her on the first international flight out of the country. I don't care where it goes." Marco nodded. "Understood." "If she ever tries to come back," Maxwell continued, his voice dropping to a whisper, "if she ever tries to contact Eva, or me, or anyone in this organization, make sure she regrets it." Slowly. Marco's expression didn't change. "Understood, boss." Brenda crumpled to the floor, sobbing hysterically. "Maxwell, please. I love you. I'll change, I swear." Maxwell looked down at her with no emotion whatsoever. No anger. No pity. Nothing. "You should have thought of that," he said quietly, "before you made my daughter's life a living hell." He turned and walked toward the staircase, his footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. "Marco," he called over his shoulder. "Boss. If she's still here in 11 minutes, drag her out." "Yes, sir." Maxwell climbed the stairs without looking back. Behind him, he could hear Brenda's wails echoing through the house he'd built for her. A house that would never shelter her again. He didn't feel guilt. He didn't feel regret. He felt nothing but cold, absolute certainty. Some lines, once crossed, could never be uncrossed. And hurting his daughter was the one line even Maxwell Rossi would never forgive. She's gone. Erased. But the real question is, can Maxwell undo the damage she's done to Eva's heart? The answer might break yours. Maxwell stood outside Eva's bedroom door for a long moment, his hand hovering over the doorknob. Behind him, he could hear Brenda's sobs, Marco's low voice giving orders, footsteps rushing up and down the stairs. But up here on the 2nd floor, in front of this door, the world was quiet. He knocked softly. 3 gentle taps. "Eva." "Sweetheart, it's me. Can I come in?" Silence. Then, after what felt like an eternity, the sound of small feet padding across carpet. The lock clicked. The door cracked open just a sliver. One brown eye peeked out, red and swollen from crying. Maxwell's heart, the same heart that had remained ice-cold while ordering Brenda's exile, cracked down the middle. "Hey, baby girl," he said softly. "Can I come in?" The door opened wider. Eva stood there in her pajamas, pink with little rabbits printed on them, the same rabbit she'd loved since the day he'd found her. Her stuffed rabbit was clutched so tightly to her chest that her knuckles were white. Maxwell knelt down, bringing himself to her level. He opened his arms. "Come here." Eva hesitated. Just for a second. As if she still wasn't sure. As if she still thought this might be some kind of trick. Then she broke. She collapsed into his chest, sobbing so hard her whole body shook. Maxwell wrapped his arms around her, one hand cradling the back of her head, the other holding her tight against him. "I've got you," he whispered. "I've got you, sweetheart. You're safe now. Is Mommy really gone?" Eva's voice was muffled against his shirt. "She's gone. And she's never coming back," she said. Eva pulled back slightly, looking up at him with tear-stained cheeks. "She said you didn't really want me. She said you only kept me because you felt bad. She said one day you'd get tired of me and send me away too." Maxwell felt something inside him shatter. He cupped Eva's small face in his hands, forcing her to look directly into his eyes. "Eva Marie Rossi," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "you listen to me very carefully. You are my daughter, not because of blood, not because of guilt, but because I chose you, and I will always choose you. Do you understand me?" But she said, she lied, about everything. "And I should have seen it sooner." His voice cracked. "I should have protected you better. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I'm so sorry." Eva's eyes widened. She'd never heard him apologize before. To anyone. You're not mad at me," she whispered. "Mad at you." Maxwell pulled her close again. "Baby, I could never be mad at you. Ever. What happened wasn't your fault. None of it was your fault." Eva buried her face in his shoulder and cried. Not the desperate, terrified sobs from before, but the kind of crying that comes with relief, with safety, with finally feeling protected. Maxwell held her and let her cry until she had nothing left. But healing a broken child takes more than words. It takes time. It takes proof. And Maxwell Rossi is about to make a promise that will change both their lives forever. The house felt different after Brenda left. Quieter. But not in a bad way. In the way a house feels when a storm finally passes and you can breathe again. Maxwell carried Eva to her bed and tucked her in, pulling the covers up to her chin. He sat in the chair beside her bed, the same chair he'd sat in every night when she first came to live with them, when she'd wake up screaming from nightmares about fire and blood. "Will you stay?" Eva whispered, her voice small in the darkness. "As long as you need me to. What if I need you to stay forever?" Maxwell smiled despite himself. "Then I guess I'm staying forever." Eva's eyes were already drooping, exhaustion finally winning over fear. "Daddy." "Yeah, sweetheart. I love you." 3 words. Simple words. Words he'd heard from her before. But tonight, they hit different. Tonight, they felt earned. "I love you too, Eva. More than anything in this world." She fell asleep within minutes, her breathing evening out, her small hand still clutching her rabbit. Maxwell stayed in that chair for hours, watching her sleep. Watching the way her chest rose and fell. Watching the peace that finally settled over her features. And he thought about everything Brenda had told him. Every excuse. Every justification. Every twisted rationalization for the torture she'd inflicted. She'd been jealous. That was the truth of it. Jealous that a 7-year-old child received the one thing Brenda never could. Maxwell's unconditional love. Because the truth was, Maxwell had never truly loved Brenda. He'd married her because she was beautiful, intelligent, and useful. Because she fit the image of what a mafia boss's wife should be. Because she asked the right questions and knew when to stay silent. But love, real love, He'd never felt that for her. Not the way he felt it for the sleeping child in front of him. Eva was his redemption. His second chance. The one pure, good thing in a life built on violence and blood. And Brenda had tried to destroy her. For that, there would never be forgiveness. As the night stretched on and the city lights glimmered beyond the window, Maxwell made a decision. Not in anger, not in haste, but with the cold, calculated certainty that defined everything he did. He was going to make sure Eva never doubted his love again. He was going to make sure she knew, beyond any shadow of doubt, that she was his daughter, his heir, his legacy, and he was going to make it legal. What happens when a mafia boss decides to go legitimate, at least for one thing? The answer might surprise you. The next morning, Maxwell woke up in the chair beside Eva's bed. His neck was stiff, his back aching, but he didn't care. Eva was still asleep, curled up on her side, her rabbit tucked under her chin. Maxwell stood carefully, trying not to wake her, and made his way downstairs. Marco was in the kitchen, drinking coffee and reading the newspaper. "She get on the plane?" Maxwell asked. "Buenos Aires. Direct flight." "She's gone, boss." "Good." Marco studied him for a moment. "You all right?" Maxwell poured himself coffee. "Black. No sugar." "Get me Anthony on the phone." "The lawyer?" "Yeah." Marco raised an eyebrow but didn't question it. He pulled out his phone and dialed. After a moment, he handed it to Maxwell. "Anthony," Maxwell said. "It's Maxwell Rossi. I need to see you today. This morning, if possible." There was a pause. Anthony Delgado had been Maxwell's lawyer for 15 years. He knew better than to ask questions. "I can be there in an hour," Anthony said. "Make it 30 minutes. Maxwell hung up and handed the phone back to Marco. "You finalizing the adoption?" Marco asked quietly. Maxwell nodded. "Should have done it years ago. Brenda wouldn't have liked that." "Brenda," Maxwell said coldly, "is no longer relevant to any decisions I make." Marco grinned slightly. "Fair enough." 35 minutes later, Anthony arrived with a briefcase full of documents. They sat in Maxwell's office, a wood-paneled room lined with bookshelves and expensive art, most of it stolen from people who no longer needed it. "I want to finalize Eva's adoption," Maxwell said without preamble. "Legally. Officially. I want her last name to be Rossi on every document that exists. Birth certificate, social security, passport, everything." Anthony nodded, already pulling out papers. "We can file the paperwork this week. Given that you've had custody for 3 years and there are no living biological relatives contesting it, this should be straightforward." "Good. There's also the matter of your will." "Change it. Everything goes to Eva. The houses, the accounts, the businesses. All of it." Anthony paused, his pen hovering over the page. "Maxwell, are you sure? Given your line of work, if something happens to you—" "If something happens to me," Maxwell interrupted, his voice hard, "I want to make damn sure my daughter is taken care of. She gets everything. And I want Marco listed as her legal guardian if I die before she turns 18. Marco, who'd been standing by the door, straightened. "Boss. You're the only person I trust, Marco. The only one. If I'm gone, you make sure she's safe. You make sure she gets an education. You make sure she has a choice about whether to stay in this life or get out. Understood?" Marco's jaw tightened. Then he nodded. "Understood." Anthony scribbled notes furiously. "I'll have everything ready for your signature by the end of the week. Make it 3 days. Maxwell. 3 days. Anthony. I don't care what it costs. Anthony sighed but nodded. 3 days. After the lawyer left, Maxwell sat alone in his office, staring at the papers on his desk. Legal documents. Official papers. Things that would bind Eva to him not just emotionally, but legally. Permanently. No one would ever be able to take her away from him. And more importantly, she would never doubt that she belonged. But paperwork is one thing. Healing a child's heart is another. And Eva's about to ask the question Maxwell fears most. Later that afternoon, Eva came downstairs. She was still in her pajamas, her hair messy, and her rabbit dragging behind her on the floor. Maxwell was in the kitchen, trying to make breakfast. Trying being the operative word. He could orchestrate hits on rival families, but scrambled eggs remained mysteriously elusive. "Hi, Daddy," Eva said softly from the doorway. Maxwell turned. "Hey, sweetheart. You hungry?" Eva nodded and climbed onto one of the bar stools at the kitchen island. She watched him cook for a moment, her legs swinging. "Daddy." "Yeah. Is Mommy really never coming back?" Maxwell plated the eggs, slightly burnt, but edible, and set them in front of her with some toast. "She's really never coming back." "Good." The word was so matter-of-fact, so final, that Maxwell actually stopped what he was doing and looked at her. Eva was staring at her plate, her small hands gripping her fork. "I know I'm supposed to be sad, but I'm not. Is that bad?" Maxwell sat down beside her. "No, baby. That's not bad. You don't have to feel sad about someone who hurt you. She said I killed my real mommy and daddy. She said it was my fault they died." Maxwell felt his jaw tighten. "That's not true. What happened to your parents wasn't your fault. It was a terrible accident. A tragedy. But it wasn't your fault. She said you only kept me because you felt guilty." "That's not true either." Eva looked up at him, her brown eyes searching his face. "Then why did you keep me?" It was the question Maxwell had been dreading. Because how do you explain to a 7-year-old that you saw yourself in her eyes? That you saw the chance to save one innocent life in a career spent ending guilty ones? That you needed her as much as she needed you? He took a breath. "I kept you," he said slowly, "because the moment I saw you, I knew you were supposed to be mine. I knew you were my daughter, even if we didn't share blood. And every day since then, that feeling has only gotten stronger." Eva's eyes filled with tears. "Really? Really? Even though I'm not really yours." Maxwell reached out and cupped her face gently. "Eva, listen to me. You are really mine. You're as much my daughter as if I'd been there the day you were born. And I'm making it official." "What do you mean?" "I'm adopting you. Legally. Officially. Your last name will be Rossi on every piece of paper that matters. And when I die, everything I have, all of it, goes to you." Eva's eyes went wide. "Everything. Everything. Because you're my daughter. My heir. My legacy." He smiled slightly. "And someday, when you're old enough, you'll get to decide what kind of life you want. Whether you want to stay in this world or leave it behind. But either way, you'll always be Eva Rossi. And you'll always be mine." The tears spilled over, running down Eva's cheeks. But this time, they weren't tears of fear or pain. They were tears of relief. Of joy. Of finally feeling like she belonged. She launched herself at Maxwell, wrapping her small arms around his neck and holding on tight. "I love you, Daddy." Maxwell held her close, his own eyes burning. "I love you too, sweetheart. More than you'll ever know." But in Maxwell's world, love is a weakness. And enemies are everywhere. The question isn't if someone will try to use Eva against him. It's when. Eva stood in the backyard, laughing as she chased a butterfly through the garden. Her hair had grown longer. Her cheeks had filled out. The bruises were long gone. Maxwell watched from the patio, a rare smile on his face. Marco stood beside him, also watching. She's doing better. Yeah, Maxwell said quietly. She is. You made the right call, boss. With Brenda. Maxwell didn't respond. He didn't need to. You worried? Marco asked. About the other families finding out about her? Every day. We can protect her. I know. But she shouldn't have to live behind bulletproof glass and armed guards forever. She deserves better than this life. Then give her better, Marco said simply. You got the money. You got the power. You want her to have a normal life? Make it happen. Maxwell considered this. It wasn't that simple, of course. You didn't just walk away from the Mafia. Not when you were Maxwell Rossi. Not when you ran half the city. But maybe he could start building an exit strategy. Not for himself. For her. Give her options. Give her choices. Give her the life he never had. Daddy! Eva called from the garden. Come see. Maxwell stood and walked toward her, Marco following behind. Eva was crouched in the grass, examining something. Look, she said, pointing. It's a ladybug. Maxwell knelt beside her, watching the tiny red insect crawl across a leaf. She's pretty, Eva said softly. Do you think she has a family? Probably. Do you think they miss her when she's gone? Maxwell looked at his daughter, this small, precious thing he'd chosen to protect, and felt something shift in his chest. Yeah, he said quietly. I think they do. Eva smiled and carefully moved the leaf so the ladybug could crawl to safety. Then she stood and took Maxwell's hand. Come on, Daddy. Let's go inside. You promised we'd make cookies today. I did, didn't I? And you always keep your promises. Maxwell squeezed her hand gently. Always. They walked back toward the house together, father and daughter, connected not by blood but by something far stronger. Choice. Love. Loyalty. And as Maxwell looked down at Eva's smiling face, he made himself a new promise. Whatever it took, whatever he had to do, he would keep her safe. He would give her the life she deserved, even if it cost him everything. Because that's what fathers do. What would you have done in Maxwell's position? Would you have chosen differently? Drop your thoughts below, and if this story moved you, hit that subscribe button. Because the Rossi family's story is far from over. And trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next.